All right, so I want to talk about how do you actually write a research paper, and hopefully this is going to really help you out. And this is geared towards high school students to professors, and I think that there is a basic structure to all of this, and this is going to be very, very helpful for you. So, if you don't know me, I am Professor Dave Massack. I'm Associate Professor of Innovation Strategy and Entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that help me out that I want to pay the favor for to help you out. In terms of writing a research paper, there's a systematic sort of step-by-step process that you do it. And I want to talk about the step-by-step process. So the first thing that you have to do is idea generation for that research paper. Now you can look at the research that you have been done before. That's sort of a deductive approach. But then there's a lot of inductive approaches that a lot of people do in terms of looking around and sort of doing discovery. You actually find a lot more interesting discoveries if you do that inductive approach. And you'll see lots of people do those things that make major discoveries. However, you have to have a good understanding of what it is in the literature to understand what the bigger picture is. That's a super important thing. So it's not only about, it's an advanced deductive approach to some degree. And there's some people that call it abduction in terms of what I'm talking about. But, really it is looking at the world around us and just being curious. If you're curious, that's going to help you out a lot. And so having conversations with other people, this is the fun part where you have ideas and you're looking for new and original ideas. I've got a bunch of links in the show notes if you want to look for different videos and how I talk about these different things. Um, you know, the next thing that you need to do is as you're having these ideas, you need to write them down. And it doesn't have to be pretty. That's the thing that everybody forgets. You just got to write down ideas. And no matter what those ideas look like, they don't have to be structured in any sort of sense, but just write like, one page and just keep writing. That's the name of the game. You're going to be feeling like you write all the time, and that's actually a good thing. So a researcher typically does not spend as much time in the lab as what most people think. Most of us actually spend the vast majority of our time writing, and that is a super important thing. So I write about probably 8 to 10 pages a day, and that's what I do every single day. We just write. So get into that habit where you're just writing all the time. Doesn't mean that it's going to turn into something. Often it doesn't, but you need to get into that habit of just writing and writing and writing and writing. There's a lot of rejection that you get along the way when you write a research paper, so just be well aware of that. So to get a research paper, unless you're really fortunate, everything kind of goes your way, you're probably going to write to get a 15-page research paper in a journal someplace. You're probably going to have to write 300-400 pages of work, because it's just there's so much work that happens behind the scenes in terms of writing and writing and writing. So getting it down, writing those research ideas is going to be the most important thing. That's the most important step. Then once you get those ideas down, is kind of formatting to get the paper down, or getting it into some sort of thesis that you're looking at, right? So it's formatting and iterating. It's going to be another important step, but it's actually a little easier than that writing step. So just format and iterate, and format and iterate. And there's lots of weaving that goes on. There's lots of like back and forth that will happen, and you just have to get used to that, where you are just write, and then you go back and you try to make sense of it and put it all together. Then there is, once you sort of have a coherent research stream or research question, the theory kind of written down, then you go into writing or doing analysis. So it's vitally important for you to not do analysis until you have a very, very concrete research paper that's already basically written. And the reason why you don't want to go into analysis, you're going to go in too many directions. It happens every time. You're going to spend absorbent amounts of time going into weird directions if you don't have a very structured, and it's basically, when you do the analysis, when you jump into the data, when you do an experiment, you want to get to the point where it is just simply executing. And the more that you can simply just execute like a robot, like every procedure is laid out, you've thought of everything, everything is done. The more that you could do that, the better off you're going to be. You could do different things. A lot of people are pre-registering, their experiments and studies these days. There's lots of that goes on, but just making sure that it's really structured before you jump into it. Now, there's a lot of challenges that you might sort of face when you're doing that you're not going to be well aware of. Just know when you do that is normal and natural. And you just simply want to document it, think about what you're doing as you're going through it. It's going to happen. So don't get all like too uptight with the fact that it doesn't follow what you thought it was going to be. It's just going to happen. It happens for everybody. But the thing is, if you can think about the more stuff up front, the better off that you are going to be in terms of understanding how all of this stuff works together. And I really, really want to stress that. It's just think up front as much as you can how everything is going to work. You're not going to think of everything, but that is okay. You're gonna jump into the mess. The fifth thing that I think is going to be very vitally important after you've sort of written up, you come up with some results. It's pretty systematic, right? So you have this basic idea, you write, and then you go and you analyze the data, and then you present your work, right? So so then you analyze your data, then you put it into what your results are, and what are the implications of these results, and then you present your work, and you're going to present it at various different conferences, or maybe it's in front of the classroom. However it is, you're looking for people to just ask questions and think about what you're doing. And then when they ask those questions, what you do is you go back and you interweave those questions within the paper, because that's sort of giving you insight in terms of where people are getting stuck with what you actually did. And so you might actually interweave it within the paper. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. It just means that people are getting stuck in terms of what they thought of what you're doing. And you got to interweave it within the paper. And then finally, hopefully you submit it to someplace. Maybe it's you submitting it into class, or you submit it into a journal. But then as you do that, this is a vital step that most people will forget, is that once you get feedback from other people, you don't stop, right? So you're gonna send it to class. Your professor is gonna give you feedback and say, this is not quite right. Go back and reiterate and retry to do it, rework at it. And as you do that, you get better and better and better in terms of anticipating what's gonna happen next. It's a long process, and it's gonna take a lot more work and a lot more iteration than you think. So if you haven't sort of figured it out, iterating and going through and writing. So writing as much as you can, like verbal diarrhea, writing as much as you can. It's going to be uber important, but then as well, iterating and thinking through what other people have said as you work on this. And so this entire process is going to take months and months and months. It might even take years. So it's not uncommon to take years, many years, for people to work on these things before it gets to where everybody is satisfied with it. So just have that in mind. If you worked on it on a weekend, that's not long enough. That's not enough work. People put a lot of time and effort into these ideas, and it's a lot more than you ever think it's going to be. It's not a weekend. It's not a month. It's not several months. It's often years and years and years where people work on these things, and until they get an idea that is just working. So just have that in mind. Have in mind actually a good rule of thumb. Assume it's going to take you a decade, and then once you get to that point that you have this idea after a decade, you're going to be at the right mindset. If you're thinking it's going to take a decade, that's probably about right for any research paper that is going to be credible, and that scientists are actually going to say, hey, I actually believe what you're saying. So that's it. With that, give me a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.